Welcome to Your School Journey, where we dive into the topics that matter in education today. We're here to help parents understand the conversations happening in schools and offer tips to support your child's learning along the way.
Hi everyone, welcome to the program once again. We have Mitch Tattersall here today with us. He is the Dean of Studies at Emmanuel College. Today we're going to be discussing all things ATAR and high school diplomas. And in our context in Queensland, that's a Queensland Certificate of Education or a QCE. Welcome to the podcast, Mitch.
Thanks, Mel. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. And well, let's get straight into it. We've got lots of acronyms in education, right? There's just a boatload of acronyms everywhere we go. And today our acronyms are ATAR and QCE. Could you just start by giving the audience a bit of an understanding of probably what the acronyms are, but also what they mean?
No worries. So we'll start with the QCE. So that's the Queensland Certificate of Education. So that's given out by the QCAA, which is the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority. And that essentially is your certificate that you get at the end of Year 12 to show that you have successfully graduated Year 12 in Queensland, that you completed the required level of learning. We also have the ATAR, which is the Australian Tertiary Admissions Rank. That's given out by QTAC, which is the Queensland Tertiary Admissions Centre. And the ATAR is essentially the percentile ranking that you get that tells you where you rank amongst all the other Year 12s for your particular year level, and that's only used for university entrance.
Right, so these kind of things are a big deal. They're a huge deal for kids that are finishing school, they're going through Year 12, and this is all that kind of gets talked about towards the pointy end. So I guess if we were to step back for parents, what kind of things do I need to do to start preparing my child for this ATAR journey, or do they even need to go on an ATAR journey?
Yeah, great question. And I think it's really important for parents and students to, particularly in your grade 9, grade 10, when they're starting to think about future pathways, is to not just think straight away about ATAR. At the end of the day, the ATAR is just a tool that you can use to get into university. And so the first thing that students really need to think about is, well, what do I want to do when I leave school? And for some students, if that's going to be a trade pathway, if they want to go do, say, further study at VET or go overseas, and ATAR maybe isn't the thing that they need to be focusing on. However, if they know that they want to go to university, they want to study, say, engineering or medicine, then definitely an ATAR is something they need to be thinking about quite early on. So it's really good if parents and students can just be having discussions about broader future pathways in Year 9, Year 10. If that involves an ATAR, then that's when, as we get towards the start of grade 11, that's where we start wanting to think about the ATAR more and more, because that's when the rubber starts hitting the road in terms of your academic subjects.
So the QCE and the ATAR, is there some kind of a connection between the kind of subjects that you might need to study in terms of an ATAR and the QCE itself, or does it not matter?
Yeah, there's some connection. So to get a QCE, you have to accrue 20 credit points across normally your 2 years of senior schooling. So you get a credit point for every semester that you pass. So most schools will get students to study 5 or 6 subjects. You multiply that by 4, you're looking at 20 to 24 points. You also get points for any VET study that you do, so certificate 3s, diplomas. And so your QCE, really, you can mix and match subjects as much as you want to try and get those points. There are some base requirements around the amount of subjects you need to study and for how long and how many points you need to get. The relevant staff member at a school can tell you that information. When it comes to ATAR, to receive an ATAR, you need to study at least 4 general subjects. So in the QCAA senior secondary system, we have applied subjects and general subjects. Applied subjects don't have an external exam. They are, quote unquote, probably what we would call easier subjects, whereas general subjects all have an external exam. And those are the subjects that you will generally use towards counting towards your ATAR. So to get an ATAR, you need to be studying at least 4 of those subjects. Most students who get an ATAR are studying 5 general subjects because your ATAR is calculated from your 5 best results. And so if you're only using 4 general subjects, your 5th result's going to be calculated from an applied subject or from a VET course, which is likely to have quite a poor overall result when compared to a general subject.
So you're saying that if you are looking for a high ATAR, you might want to actually hedge your bets, if you like, and actually do 6 subjects so that just in case you've bombed out in one of them or something happens, you've actually got those available for the best calculation you can get. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, potentially. And that's quite common in a lot of schools. However, we are seeing more and more some schools only offering 5 subjects to their students, because there is also the argument to be made that when you're doing 6 subjects, at the end of the day, there's a good chance that one of those subjects isn't even going to count towards your ATAR. Well, it definitely won't. you can only take 5 subjects towards your ATAR. And so for some students, they might prefer, or some schools might prefer, just to have the students study 5 subjects and you just get the best result you can possibly in those 5. And then those 5 results are the ones that will contribute towards your ATAR.
So that to me sounds like a good strategy. Do you know of any other kind of strategies that you could advise parents and obviously students, if they're listening as well, that they can apply in getting their ATAR or in deciding what they do during their senior schooling to get the best results possible?
Definitely. I think the most important thing students can do, particularly in year 9, year 10, is when they're thinking about future pathways, is to actually do their research. Know exactly what do you want to do when you leave school. And we're not saying, you don't need to have your life figured out, but have a good plan about what might you want to do when you leave school. What are the prerequisite subjects you need for university? And then when you have that, that gives you the tools that when you get into senior secondary, you know the subjects you're studying and why you're studying them. So you can actually have purpose behind your study. So we would always say for students, you always pick the subjects that you are good at and that you enjoy. And so that way, I think that's really laying the foundation for a successful senior schooling experience. That not only ensures students get their QCE points and get their QCE, but they also get an ATAR that is reflective of their abilities. And that is going to leave them in a competitive standpoint as they go into university.
Now, I love what you said there about choosing the subjects that you enjoy, because that kind of brings me to this idea of there's a lot of myths that are around this ATAR world. Could you just unpack a few of those for us that students often might say or that might just go around in the community?
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest myths I think I hear a lot about is that to get a good ATAR, you need to be studying a certain combination of subjects. And often that combination involves students saying, I'm going to study math methods, specialist maths, chemistry, physics, biology, another, study of religion, all these on paper, quite difficult subjects. And that's just not true. There are students who study those subjects and get very good results and get excellent ATARs. There are also students who get excellent ATARs studying subjects all across the different range of faculties that are on offer in schools. There are students who get very high ATARs studying art subjects. And there are also students studying those very difficult science subjects and math subjects who are getting poor ATARs. And so the first thing I'd always recommend to any student is that if you're picking a subject, make sure you're picking it because you enjoy it and you're good at it. It's obviously no use doing a subject that you might be good at it, but you absolutely despise coming to school because you've got to be at school for 7 hours a day, 200 days a year. I wouldn't want to be doing something I absolutely hate for 2 years straight. And so for students who are aiming for that high ATAR, they definitely want to be doing things that they enjoy. In saying that, if they know that they're wanting to pursue a degree that requires a high ATAR requirement, say something like medicine or physiotherapy, there does need to be some consideration given to the subjects that they select, not only with university prerequisites, but also the general scaling, the scaling of some subjects at that high-end achievement level. And so for those students who are strong in the maths and in the sciences, then I would say, it is a wise decision to study those subjects as long as they've got that commitment and that enjoyment in the subject to actually achieve well.
Yeah, so on that topic of scaling, I have, of course, heard that the scaling can negatively impact you as well. If of course, you've gone, I want to do these great range of subjects that have got high scaling things inside them and all that kind of stuff. But what's the deal with scaling if you kind of don't do so well in a subject?
Yeah, so the way scaling works is it's not like, back in the OP system where a whole subject would sort of move up or down. It's actually the individual results in the subject move up. So let's say specialist maths, for example, you might get an 85 out of 100 in 1 year and it might scale up to a 90 out of 100. Great. In that same cohort though, a 30 out of 100 might scale down to 20 out of 100. So for one student in the subject, their result may improve, whereas another student in that same cohort, their result may actually drop. And the difficult thing is we don't know from year to year how the scaling works because it's a iterative algorithm that is based upon all of the actual results achieved that year. So we can't say for sure that the scaling from, say, last year is going to be the same as the scaling as it will be this year. And I always make sure to flag that with students and parents that, whilst we can draw out trends and we can generally say, these subjects will probably scale well at these certain achievement levels, we don't know for sure. So if scaling is the only reason you're choosing a subject, you're putting a lot of faith in something that we don't actually know is true.
So you're more likely going to be more successful if, like you said, if we can reiterate what you've been saying, you choose the subjects that you love to do, that you'll actually devote some time to, and you get exceptional results, you've got a much better chance than you've chosen subjects that have got high scaling, but you've bombed out in.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, let's be honest here. Music, for example, as a subject, if you get 100 out of 100 in music, that is still going to be a fantastic exit result, no matter what after the scaling. If you don't like mathematics and you pick specialist maths and you get 40 out of 100, that 40 is never going to be better than getting a 90 plus result in another subject. So definitely always want to be choosing subjects you are good at and that you enjoy.
So Mitch, we spent a lot of time talking around the ATAR, but could you unpack for our parents exactly what that number is? I think it's 99.99, I think is the highest number, which is really odd when it's not 100. So what's the whole deal here?
Yeah. So the reason the ATAR actually can't be 100 is that it's a percentile rank. So the number ranges anywhere from 0 up to 99.95. So 99.95 is the highest ATAR you can receive. And essentially that number means that you would be in the top 0.5% of students in Queensland, and then it works its way down. Now, interestingly, QTAC does not report on ATARs below 30. So if you can get an ATAR all the way from 99.95 all the way down to 30, and then anything under 30 is just reported as an ATAR below 30. And so that's essentially what the number is. It's a comparison tool, and it's used by QTAC to order students and rank them when they select their university preferences.
So can you just clarify for us, maybe there's lots of people that already know this, but what does QTAC actually stand for? There's another acronym for us.
Yeah, so QTAC is the Queensland Tertiary Admissions Centre, and so they're responsible for handling all of the admission into universities in Queensland.
And can you give me the connection here? So if I got a 99.95, what does that mean for my opportunities to get into university as opposed to, say, I don't know, I'll throw a number out there, 77.1 or something?
Yeah, so 99.95 pretty much means for almost all degrees that are using an ATAR as an entry pathway, you would be guaranteed entry into those programs. There are certain degrees, say like medicine at some universities, where even a 99.95 is not enough. You still need to write a written submission to get to those courses or pass additional tests. Whereas if you got a 70, that 70 means that you're only going to be admitted into degrees where the ATAR cutoff for that year is 70 or below. So if the ATAR cutoff for that year was 75 into a degree, you wouldn't have met the requirements for entry into that degree. And that's often just based on preferences across the state from students and also demand into those degrees.
So you probably every year it might change. Is that what you're saying?
It can change. And for some degrees, I have seen massive changes from year to year in the ATAR requirements. Some degrees tend to be quite consistent. So again, it's one of those things, it's hard to say. We don't know that just because the cutoff for a certain degree was an 82 this year, that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be an 82 next year. It could be 85, it could be 92, it could be 72.
So in summary, we're basically looking at the amount of places in a university, and the ATAR is basically going, here's whether you can get a place or not.
Yep. Essentially, that's what it exists for. Right. And it's important to recognize as well that once you have gone to university and you've completed some coursework, they will actually, QTAC can use that to turn it back into an equivalent entry rank to then get entry into further degrees.
So is it possible that you could bomb out in your year 12 year and you manage to get into university, but you're able to then maybe take another course after you've been in university doing some type of course for 12 months or so?
Yeah, absolutely. If, let's say, you wanted to do engineering and you didn't get the cutoff, you might go and just do, say, a Bachelor of Science, do that for 6 months, do that for a year. You achieve the right grades, that will actually then give you an equivalent entry rank that you might use to get into engineering the next year.
It's probably not something we'd be wanting to encourage our students to aim for. We'd probably want them to aim higher, but it's good to know that there's a fallback if there's needed.
Well, I think it's important for students to realise that there is always alternative pathways. We really want to encourage well-being in our students and to take care of themselves and to realise that while senior schooling is important, it isn't the be-all and end-all of their futures.
So we have spent a lot of time talking about ATARs because I think it's an area of confusion that people often have, and you've unpacked a lot of really good points there. You just mentioned, though, alternative pathways. What are some of the other options here in that space?
Yeah, so in terms of alternative pathways, obviously lots of students may want to go straight into work when they finish year 12, and that's becoming a lot more common. We're finding in a lot of schools, 30-40% of students are no longer going to university straight out of year 12. And this is in the private sector. Even for students who might want to go into university, we're finding that there's a lot more opportunity now for students to complete vet studies as part of their senior secondary studies. And for some universities, they will actually treat successful completion of a vet qualification and convert that into an equivalent entry rank. So we have students that are getting entry into university study without actually being ATAR eligible, because the entry rank that they're getting from their completed Cert 3 or from their diploma is giving them entry into their university courses. So there's a lot more options available now for students to get into university besides just the traditional ATAR entry pathway.
This is incredible information to know at an earlier point than if I'm maybe even in year 11 and I'm about to go into year 12. That feels like it's almost too late. What kind of things do you think that you could advise parents to start thinking about, talking with their kids about, and when should they start talking about it so that they can actually be prepared for all of the options that they have presented to them?
I think that as your child's school is offering their subject selections for year 9 into year 10 and then year 10 into year 11, those are the best times to be having these conversations with your child, to be asking them about what are they passionate about? What do they want to do when they leave school? Have they thought about that? Students in Queensland should be completing some sort of set planning in year 10 where they're thinking about their post-secondary schooling options. So that set planning process is a fantastic opportunity for students to be talking with their parents, with their teachers about what they want to do when they leave school, what are the different pathways available. And I would really encourage as well students and parents to make leverage of the resources available at their school. Go and speak to their guidance officer or the senior school coordinator to find out what other different pathways available, not only within the school, but also externally. We know that each school has lots of opportunities available and they vary from school to school, but there's also lots of things that students can be doing outside of their formal school studies that can help them to get a leg up for their future study and work.
So, Mitch, just for the acronym hunters out there, you've mentioned set planning. And again, there's a lot of acronyms in this space, and it's really good that we're unpacking them. What exactly is set planning?
Yeah, so set planning is your senior education and training planning. So essentially planning out your senior secondary studies or your vet studies that you're going to take on with the aim of then having a smooth transition into your post-secondary pathway, whether that is work, overseas, or tertiary study.
So, Mitch, just at the top of the podcast, you were talking about the QCE and how many credit points and what have you. Is there any resource online that we can point parents to actually help them out with that?
Yeah, definitely. The best place for both parents and students to go to would be the MyQCE website, which can be found at myqce.qcaa.qld.edu.au. And that essentially is the website that QCAA has designed for students. And it has information about how to prepare for your senior schooling, prepare for external exams. It has information about QCE eligibility. And so it's a really great one-stop shop for parents and students who are looking for more information about their QCE.
Sounds like a really, really good jumping off point. And also, I guess, if they are looking at applied subjects or the general subjects, is there a website that we can point them to for them to get a bit of an overview of what those subjects might be?
Yeah, definitely. If they were to go to the QCAA's website, there is a section on there where they can look at all of the senior secondary syllabuses and look at the difference between the applied subjects, the general subjects, and actually have a look at what's involved in each different subject. So that's a really good place to go as well.
That is absolutely brilliant. And what we will do is we'll link those into the show notes of this episode so that parents will be able to access those, which is really great. Well, Mitch, as we wind up the podcast, I guess you probably hear a lot of questions from parents, from students over the years. Are there some common ones that you'd like to share some answers, to parents to actually give them a little bit more of an understanding of this that maybe we haven't brought up already?
Yeah, I think the main question that I often receive is to do, and I know we've spoken about, is to do around which subjects should I pick? And I just think it's really important that kids and parents always remember that the ATAR is just a tool. Your senior secondary learning is a journey, and that needs to be the main driver, and your passions and what you want to do when you leave school should be the main driver behind the subjects you're choosing, not just ensuring you get the best ATAR possible. And so I think that the main misconceptions are around this idea that the ATAR is the most important thing about a student's senior secondary schooling, and that's just not true. It is an important aspect for some students, and it is something that definitely we encourage students to be aware of and be working towards. However, we don't want students making choices around their future just based around a number. And that is, at the end of the day, it is just a number, and it's useful for maybe the first month or two when you leave school, at which point it's redundant once you're into your course.
Well, Mitch, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge about this whole system with our parents out there. And I'm sure it's been very, very insightful and informative for them. Don't forget to check out the show notes. And thanks again, Mitch, for your time today.
No worries, Matt. It's been great. Thanks for having me.
Your School Journey is an initiative of Emmanuel College as part of our commitment to partner with parents in shaping the learning and growth of young people. This podcast is hosted by Mal Gaylor with audio production by John Eddy and executive produced by Dan Pearson. If you found this episode valuable, we'd love you to share it with other parents, subscribe for future episodes, and leave a review. You can also connect with us for more insights into education and to explore how Emmanuel College can support your child's learning journey.